which is helping to encourage children to read more poetry. There are 8 important factors that we use for selecting children's poetry. They need to be exciting. They need to have specific sound and playful words, lots of detailed image, something that it tells something exciting and has action. It's not too simplified, and the poems let the children get absorbed in the poem as if they were in the story itself. Poems that give children encouragement or happy things they can relate to, and poems that stand the test of time, like the Mother Goose rhymes. The elements of poetry. We have several of those. Rhythm. Rhythm helps children enjoy hearing the language and using words to create mood and dramatic effects. Rhyme and other sound patterns, like words like ooze and shoes that rhyme at the end of the lines, or you have internal rhyming that creates a feeling, kind of like the flowing of the river. You'll see here retreating and beating and meeting and sheeting. And as you read the whole thing, you kind of can feel the bounce of the rhythm. Poets also like to use alliteration and assonance to create sounds. The alliteration is repeating the beginning consonants or groups of consonants. Assonance is where the vowel sound is repeated. Poets also use onomatopoeia, which imitates a sound or action with words, kind of like plop, beat, smack, gasp, as you see there. Also, there's repetition. This is used to help readers grasp a concept when the poet emphasizes words or phrases. Kind of like Rossetti's lullaby. You'll see there a lot of repetition of lullaby. As you read through it, you'll see that's continually repeated, so it helps to you to remember or emphasize that. Imagery is another primary element that is used in poetry. It always encourages children to become a part of what the poet creates in the world. So you can see the things that they do, to be able to see and feel, taste, smell, all your senses. Also, figurative language. This is words that are not literal, but help clearly to see what the poet is saying. So there's metaphors, which they're like comparing the Milky Way to a thick white breath in the cold air. It's 2 different things, but there's a visual commonality. Similes, they compare things that have something in common, but are really different. Kind of like happy as a clam, as cute as a kitten. Yeah. Then you have personification. Poets use this to give inanimate objects life, kind of like the alarm clock yelling. You'll see that. And then you have hyperbole. And these are exaggerations that kind of are used to create effect. Kind of like, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. So there's a lot of different elements in the poetry that can be brought out, and it makes it happy, and that the kids just kind of get into that kind of thing. Then we have shape. A lot of poets use shape to create a visual impact to the meaning of the poem. And you'll see here that I have an example that's a poem written in the heart. And if you read through the whole poem, it kind of gives you you see the whole thing. I'll read it. It says, he wrote a poem in the shape of a heart to tell her he loved her and that they never should part, and that she was his sun and his stars and his moon, and how he had dreamt that they might marry quite soon. But she thought him stupid, ugly, and dreary, and told him she loathed him in practice and theory. And so he went off to ponder the words that she had spoken, and it was then that he saw that his poem was broken. So you see how the image of the heart, the shape, and the breaking. So you have different things that are used to emphasize a lot of times, and that's, you use word division, line division, punctuation, and capitalizations. All of those help to create the visual impact. Now I'll turn it to Kayla.
All right. So there are many different forms of poetry. So we're going to start off with lyrical poetry. It is perhaps the earliest and most enduring popular form of poetry. It actually began in ancient Greece in connection with music. Lyric poetry in today's world tends to be more quiet, inward, and meditative. Hush Little Baby is a good example of a lyric poem. Narrative poetry. The first poets were expert storytellers who told elaborate tales to entertain people, and narrative poetry was also a way of recording history. The Iliad by Homer tells the story of a 10-year battle and the ultimate defeat of Troy. Another example of a narrative poem would be Beowulf, which a lot of you have probably seen that movie. So ballads, they're a form of narrative folk song or verse popular in Europe during the Middle Ages. London Bridge is Falling Down is a good example of a ballad. Beginning in the 16th century and still today, some ballads are printed on large sheets of paper like newspapers and sold as broadside ballads at county fairs. Most have been sung and passed down by oral tradition. Usually ballads consist of an action, usually tragic or heroic. Limericks. All limericks have 5 lines where the first, second, and fifth lines rhyme and have 3 pronounced beats, and the third and fourth lines rhyme and have 2 pronounced beats. Limerick form was popularized by Edward Lear in the 19th century. Children enjoy the visual imagery that limericks create, as well as reciting the definite rhythm and rhyme found in limericks. Concrete poems. When a poem emphasizes the meaning when the poet emphasizes the meaning of a poem by shaping it into the form of a picture, a concrete poem results. So kind of like the poem that we just saw that Carla showed us with the shape of the heart, that would be an example of a concrete poem. A haiku is a very old form of Japanese poetry. Traditionally, it has 3 unrhymed lines. The first line and the last line have 5 syllables, and the second line has 7. All right, this one's a little tough. I think it's a seijo. Is a traditional form of Korean poetry. Seijos and haikus both have roots in Chinese verse. It is a poem kind of like the haiku, but instead it has 14 to 16 syllables per line, with the third line containing a humorous twist. All right, on to poems and poets. So poets who write for children use subjects that are interesting to children. They write humorous poems that encourage children to identify with characters, situations, and locations, poems that suggest mood and feelings, animal poems, and poems about witches or ghosts. Nonsense and humor. Nonsense rhymes are logical successors to Mother Goose rhymes for enjoyable introduction for children to poetry. They suggest spontaneous fun through emphatic, regular rhymes that are heightened by alliteration. They convey absurd meanings or even no meaning at all. Humorous poems, which are closely related to nonsense, deal with amusing happenings that actually could occur to a person or animal. Shel Silverstein is a good kind of example of a poet that would write a poem like this. His poems require concentration to translate the phrases and may inspire children to create their own verse filled with flip-flop words. Nature poems. Children and poets alike have marveled at the beauty and purity of nature and understand how important it is to respect nature. Emily Dickinson's poetry reflects this reverence for nature, including poems like "The Moon Was But a Chin of Gold." Nature poems by Robert Frost are frequently found in anthologies of children's literature or are illustrated in single poem versions. Animals. When reporting a summary of studies that investigated children's poetry preferences, Diane Monson and Sam Sebesta concluded that popularity of humorous poems about animals is evidence from responses by United States children. Science. Sorry. Poetry may help children see science and learning in a different light and make them more interested in learning about those things. So you could use a science poem to teach natural history, astronomy, and earth science. Characters, situations, and locations. Some poems reflect different aspects of life from different perspectives. Several stories in verse take children to familiar settings surrounded by other students. So these poems can be related to family, friends. They may tell about everyday events or provide insights into children's environments. Moods and feelings. The mood or feeling of a poem helps children connect to the situation in the story and helps children learn with things like, learn appropriate coping behaviors for dealing with things like divorce of parents, loss of a loved one, or bullying. Although Langston Hughes is not considered primarily a children's poet, his poems explore feelings, ask difficult questions, and express hopes and desires that are meaningful to readers of all ages. Poetry for adolescents. So poetry is a powerful outlet for children because words can have different meanings depending on the age and experience of the reader. According to a New York Times children's book reviewer, the act of writing poetry is a perfect medium for adolescence. It lends itself to fierce dramas and false clarities of these years and can be useful exercise for the excess of the teenage mind. Novels and verse. Poetry is an acquired taste, and the taste can only be acquired by using poetry, rolling it around on the tongue, spitting out the words, chewing ideas, putting oneself into action, taking risks, and allowing oneself to be disturbed, says John Goh. So the appreciation for language, knowledge about concepts, empathy with characters and situations, insights about oneself or others, self-expression, and enjoyment are values of poetry for children. Listening to poetry. Research shows that poetry is rarely shared with children, and even when poetry is shared, it is often isolated from other experiences. So Lee Bennett Hopkins argues that children may dislike poetry because it is frequently taught in an isolated unit or situation instead of sharing at appropriate times throughout the day. He also says that poetry deserves to be added to the total curriculum, not limited to the language arts, like with science poetry, for example. That would be what he's meaning by that. So there you go. There's Lee Hopkins' guidelines for reading poetry to children. So that just kind of tells you all about what he has come up with that would help the poetry be easier for the children to comprehend and would make them want to read more poetry.
So dramatizing poetry. Sorry, I want to make sure it didn't move. Dramatizing poetry teaches children how to put themselves in a situation that is in a poem. Like A Visit from St. Nicholas is also known as The Night Before Christmas. It shows children how the dad reacted when he stayed up and met St. Nick on Christmas Eve for Christmas. And so kids can put themselves into their own version of that as the dad, and they can act it out right in front of the teacher as a class project. Or they can act as if the children woke up with dad to meet St. Nick. Developing choral speaking. It's the interpretation of poetry or other literature by two or more voices speaking as one. Same as the three of us right now are speaking as one about poetry. Sounds so hilarious. It also helps with children who can't read. So if we're in a group of three right now, one of us can't read, the other two can help teach the one student what's going on around them and help them put their own words into a poem. Refrain arrangement. An adult reads the body of a poem while the children respond together, a refrain or chorus. And so I'm sure we all grew up with Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. And so it just helps with children who still can't read at a young age, and they're like, oh, I know what I have to say now. It's E-I-E-I-O. And so they can sit there and learn, and it's a pattern that continues to go on. Dialogue arrangement, it teaches children how, in a story, if they have someone speaking and they have someone else speaking, so it's like, Mom, it's time to go to dinner. Dad, yeah, kids, time to go to bed. And the kids are like, no, Mom, Dad, we're not ready. It's a dialogue teaching from person A speaking to person B to person C to person D, and so forth and so on. Like this Mother Goose rhyme goes, boys, the man in the wilderness asked me how many strawberries grew in the sea. Girls, I answered him as I thought good, as many red herrings as grew in the wood. Cumulative arrangement. This is used to build a climax. The first group will say the first group of words or the first line or verse, and then the second line or verse, group 1 and 2 both do it, and then the third line or verse, group 1, 2, and 3 all does it, until the very last one where all the kids will join in and say it together. And that also can help kids learn repetitiveness, and it just helps them grow together as one. Same as this old folk song, Skin and Bone. It's kind of sketchy. I don't know if that. It says, group 1 would say, there was an old woman, all skin and bones, ooh. And then group 1 and 2 would sing, she lived down by the old graveyard, ooh. And group 1, 2, and 3, and so forth and so on, until she opened the door and boo. And everyone would be able to join in and say the boo. Ooh. Choosing poetry to accompany content. My T was disappeared, so I didn't even know what my own word was. Love it. There was this one teacher in 2001 who used different poems to interact with the elementary school subjects that she had to teach to get them to pass their grade. She used one poem by Syl Silverstein for counting money in math class. This is a funny poem. I think it's hilarious. It says, my dad gave me $1 bill because I'm his smartest son. And I swapped it for 2 shiny quarters because 2 is more than 1. And then I took the quarters and traded them to Lou for 3 dimes. I guess he didn't know that 3 is more than 2. Just then, along came old blind Bates, and just because he can't see, he gave me 4 nickels for my 3 dimes, and 4 is more than 3. And I took the nickels to Harmon Coombs down at the seafood store, and the fool gave me 5 pennies for them, and 5 is more than 4. And then I went and showed my dad. He got red in the cheeks. He closed his eyes and shook his head, too proud of me to speak. By using that poem, the teacher could teach that even though it's only $1 bill, it's still more than 2 quarters, because 2 quarters is only 50 cents. And so it was able to interact poetry into even math class or science or even social studies. It shows the different ways that even poetry can just tie into everyday life, regardless of whether you're in middle school, elementary school, or even if you're a 70-year-old man. Writing poetry. When children read or listen to poetry, they develop their own insight to write their own poetry. So even in elementary school, children can sit there and look and go, I just learned about money, and I learned that 2 is not always more than 1. And so they can sit there and talk about how this one time my dad gave me $1 and I went and bought a pack of gum. They can somehow interfere that into a poem on their own time and their own levels. And that also teaches their motivations. They can learn how to put their everyday lives into a short poem. And same way a Girl Scout leader told her scouts to write a poem about their feelings following a soccer game they had just played. It can show how one student can be excited that they won, and they won 2-3, and how it was such a close game. But the goalie will sit there and talk about how she let the other team score 2 whole goals on this whole game, and how she's really down about it, and how she needs more practice. Transcriptions can teach your children to write about their feelings, same way the Girl Scouts will write about their feelings about winning the game, whether they won or lost, or they did well or they did bad. And it's all about how they feel about it, not about how she feels about them. It can help them by keeping them on track while writing their poem. The teacher can sit there and go, well, how do you feel about writing this poem about this soccer game? How do you think you did during it? Well, teacher, I did bad. I let them score 2 whole goals on us. Okay, well, write that down, and it'll help them stay focused versus going, well, I let them score 2 goals on me, but this last game, I didn't let them score any goals on me. I played really well, and that's getting them off topic from this week's game and last week's game. I think sharing a poem or sharing a PowerPoint or anything is really important when you're younger, because I went all the way to high school and not did a single out loud presentation. So I have social anxiety and it's not fun. It can teach by reading aloud. The classmates can make a book made of all the poems written by the class to share with their families or the public. They can do that and show that they can go out into their auditorium and have like a luncheon with their family, and everyone can take turns reading out loud to their family. Because when you're that young, you're not going to be shy. You're going to be like, my mom's here. I'm about to read this poem as loud as I possibly can. And so it teaches them that just because they wrote a poem and they're only 6 years old doesn't mean it doesn't need to be shared. Then, I think I'm okay if I go there. I read this video.
That was very well done, ladies. Very well done. Thank you very much. Enjoyed it. You did so much more than just read to us, which I absolutely love. My favorite thing, not to be read to. Great job. All right.
You gotta pause the
Carla. Yeah, I'm gonna pause. I'll put it somewhere. Hey, Carla.
Yes.
I did not record in time, so I missed the first part of your presentation, but I ran and got it up here. So when you look at yourself, the first part's not going to be there, but your second part will. So I'm going to put this on pause right now, and Josh, remind me to get it off. Okay. Okay. All right, that was a great job. Now, I don't really have anything else. I do want to make sure that you do turn your papers in, that they are put here. I do not accept anything late after this class period. Also email them to me on McKeesville, and I've gotten already quite a few from McKeesville. I think 8 of them. I think everybody. I've got to look on my notes. I was trying to look to see who emailed them over, and I'll print them for you. Thank you very much on that. It'll take me a week or so. That's spring break and some things going on, so hopefully that'll be good. At least I'll get it done to you before that. The only other thing, you know, your annotated bibliography, the 3rd set is coming up. So I just want to make sure that you all will bring, you choose anyone that you want to choose for that one. But make sure that if you, our ultimate goal is to have 1 book from every genre that we've learned this semester. And we'll end up we've just gotten through poetry. We've gotten through 5 or 6 different genres. Just make sure there's 1 book in your selection from every genre. And you can go ahead if you want to and pick something that's coming up, such as a biography or whatever. We haven't gone over it yet, but if you see a biography that looks interesting to you, you may pick that up as one of your choices. But any choice that you want. But do let me know if you're going to do an upper level young adult book, then let me know, because that counts for 2. Don't assume I'm going to figure that out. I will notice it if you say H level on your annotated bibliography, but if you don't say up to 12th grade or 9th or 10th grade or whatever, I won't pick that up. So if you are used, yes, dear.
Okay, so for the 3rd one, I want to make sure I get this right.
Yes.
Any book from each genre?
Yes. The first set of 5 were award winners. The second set of 5 were multicultural. Now, you could have had any genre in those. You could have had 5 different genres that were award winners. It doesn't matter. But as long as when you are done with all 20, you've covered every genre that we've covered through the chapters. So you at least have read 1 book within that genre.
When are the next 5 due?
Hold on one second. The due dates are all online under the assignment due dates. March 18th. Thank you. Under the assignments tab, you'll see a link that says what? Due dates. Yeah, and it tells you all the due dates of everything that's supposedly that is everything due, and I'm not changing. Yeah, and then the second journal, I think it's Harry Potter. Yes. Yeah, Harry Potter. That's March what? 25th.
What if we never read Harry Potter?
Right. It's about research, GTS.
Oh, okay.
GTS this. If you don't know anything about it, you GTS why it is that way.
Okay.
So, yeah, you may not have read Harry Potter. You may not know much about it, but it's your job to GTS it, which means Google that stuff.
Yeah.
Google it. And that way you can find out as much as you can. I know some of you on your first one talking about censorship, you didn't Google up the process for censorship. We've also have it in one of our chapters about censorship and what should you do if you do choose a book in your classroom or you choose to share a book that is censored. So remember, the purpose of the discussion board is outside research, find out as much as you need and know about that, because these are issues in children's literature that you'll come across that our book doesn't necessarily teach to. We're just teaching literature and addressing specific literature in our book. Others are just issues in children's literature I want you to know about. So that's why it's important to Google that stuff. Okay. And then once you've learned a little bit about it, then that's when I share. I do want to remind you to cover all the questions. It's like 4 or 5 questions. You have to get all those questions. That's not, the second one's not due until March the 28th, and I think our 5th or whatever. I'll never know. So I don't keep all those dates in my head. Thank you, though, Tiana. And the last one is due sometime in April. Feel free to go ahead. Feel free. You can, but I'm not going to grade them. I might grade some if I have extra time over spring break, and I might jump ahead, but you do not have to. Some people already have. You've already gone ahead and done all their discussions, which is great. Good question. Any more questions?
Mrs. Freeman.
Yes, dear.
I'm going to have to go to the computer resource lab to email you my offer paper.
All right, that'll be fine.
That you should be getting soon.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know that. That would be great. I'll wait around because I know you guys don't have computers in there. But just send it to me as a Word attachment, and I'm good. I'll print it off, and that'll be good for that. So I like to have a hand document. And once I grade those, I'll send those back to you via one of our instructors coming over there so that you'll get your hand graded copy back and your grade sheet and everything back.
Miss Freeman?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I was going to say, if you want, you could probably give them to Miss Noblin, because she's in here before, and she can just leave them in here. She's my psych teacher. I don't know if you know who that is.
Does she come over here?
I think so.
I don't know. I will check into it, though. Miss Bernadette comes over, Miss Battle.
Okay.
I see her on a regular. She's my buddy. So, yeah, I'll see her, and I'll give them to her, and she can send them down by a student, one of her work studies, if that's okay. But I want you to see my comments, because what I like to do so that you can learn a little bit about it. If you missed your citing, I want you to know exactly what it was that you missed. And I'll give you, I write a lot on your papers. Don't panic. But it's my goal to help you improve upon what you didn't do, so that whatever you got prior to coming to me, you'll at least take something away that you've learned, I hope, in citing of sources and whatever else there is. But so far, so good. As long as you two guys took my suggestions on the, my little suggestions I put on discussion board, you checked your citations. Some of you email me different ones, so thank you about that too. Checked on that to see if you got it right. So thanks for taking the initiative to double check back behind yourself as well. That makes me very happy. All right, any other comments or questions? I think everything is there on discussion board for us. I don't really have, yes, Kate.
Three dates you gave us for doing videos once we reach
Oh, thank you, Katie. Yes.
17 and 24.
Say it again, Katie, what the dates were.
10th, the 17th, and 24.
10th, the 17th. Yeah, we had a question. Did y'all hear Katie?
No, ma'am.
Are we going to go ahead and sign up for those?
Yes, thank you. Yes, Katie reminded me. Yes, let me get a piece of paper. Yes, thank you, Katie. Okay, the Read Aloud project, and I know many of you, and I might as well, it's a good time to talk about it. I really didn't want to talk too much about it until we got back from spring break, but some of you may choose to go ahead and do your Read Aloud project over spring break, which would be great, this March coming up. But do arrange it with your teacher already. I've already had a couple of my online students. Theirs isn't due till April, but they went ahead and videoed and uploaded their video on YouTube and have already sent it to me, and I've posted it. We're not going to do that for our class because we're going to show them. What's the date? 10th, 17th, 24th, and the day of the exam, which would probably be like May 2nd or something like that. One thing about, I think we don't have the exam schedule out. I think our exam day is on this end is Tuesday, May 2nd. Is that the day? We've got to something they can look at the date. Check your computer. What date? May 2nd.
Miss Freeman,
Yes.
do you think that it would be easier if all of us over here at Daniel are on the same day?
Yes, that's what I intend to do. I'm going to come over there for that.
Okay.
And I would, how many is it?
8.
8 people.
Yeah.
Because I figured the best thing for me to do is probably bring the exam, because it has to be proctored by me or someone. So I'll probably bring the exam, and maybe we'll do it on that last exam day. I think I could get 8 people in 2 hours. It's not supposed to be but 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
The exam takes about 30 minutes if you study.
Second, did you say?
Yeah, the exam takes about 30 minutes if you study.
Huh.
And if that, because if you study all those 10 important things, it's just verbatim. I just randomly choose the questions on what they are. So if you study that, you should be able to get through that exam. And when is it?
When's the final exam?
We don't know that yet. They hadn't put out an exam schedule. So I'm thinking that it's probably May 1st. But what I'll do probably is come on the that Thursday over to you. I'll go Tuesday here and Thursday to you that week. I'm not sure if the exam is going to be on a Tuesday or a Thursday.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that we don't have to worry about doing our presentations the 10th, the 17th, or the 24th, right?
No. Okay. But anybody can if you want to go ahead and go ahead of time. That's absolutely fine. I'm going to set it up, and I'm going to just save those presentations for that date. The only bad thing about that is my class won't get to see y'all's presentation if it's on the exam day. And that's the only bad thing about it.
Can it be inserted in a PowerPoint?
I can, because I did it with my other class. Here's what I'll show it to you.
Something else you can do with PowerPoint, you can.
Yeah, that's a good, let me share my screen real quick, and I'm going to show you.
Like if you have like that, if say for instance we were on online class, because I had people who put us in groups even though we were online, and so we had to get together and
Here. We're going to schedule about 15 minutes. So you know what day you're going to do already?
Pop up in the corner and
Sign up your day. We're probably going to, it's about an hour and 20 minutes, so that'd probably be like 5 or 6 a day, 5 a day. All right, I'm going to show real quickly if I can get over to my I think I will. All right. My online students, I have an online class this semester. It kind of worked out that way because my classes were so full. So I did an online section. So I'm going to go over. All right, so if you can look to the left over here under,
Is that all?
that's not y'all's, this is my online class.
Oh,
This
okay.
is my online class. But I can do this with our class. I just did this for my online. Student read aloud videos, it's under the link, PowerPoint link. And Donna has already posted her video. And then we can show it.
So do you want us to go to a school or?
So that's how I've posted her video. So I can do the same for you guys.
So do you want us to go to a school? Like we have to go to a school or?
You can go to the YMCA. You can go anywhere. You have to go to a classroom situation, though.
Going to the church.
You have to be in a classroom situation in order to get the benefit of this read aloud. It could be at a church. It could be at a YMCA. It could be at the library on Saturdays when they have those Saturday reads. Yeah, any of those things. It's and you'll see the guidelines under assignments tab, what the guidelines for that are. I do want you to remember one thing.
I'm gonna tell you.
You need to upload this video off of your phone onto a YouTube video, so it will show. And then I can just incorporate that link. We could click that link and go right on to the video. Now, most of you guys do it into a PowerPoint presentation, and that's fine. Go do your PowerPoint. I've had PowerPoint presentations for their and what they do, but the video can be just YouTube, so all it has to do is easy, and it's not as much to download and upload it. But students do put this video inside of a YouTube video. Now, sometimes into a PowerPoint. Sometimes the teachers allow you to take pictures of the children. Sometimes they don't. It depends on if you have gotten approval and if the parent, they have gotten approval. Other than that, I'm only interested in what you show about yourself and what you're doing. So you don't have to show the children in the video. You just have to be sure your video is close enough so I can hear you and see you as you interact and do this actual teaching. So, or learning of the book and helping them. You have to follow up with an art activity or some kind of activity. You don't have to make it art, but it could be a sing-along or a whatever you want to do. I don't care. Or some kind of activity. Most people do a coloring sheet or have them draw something, or even I've even had students who had them write their own little book about a cat or whatever the thing was about. So it's all kinds of different ideas. I don't care what they are, as long as you incorporate that book in some kind of way, they'll remember it.
I got a question.
Yes.
So, my aunt is like a mom, but she's we're gonna talk about whatever. But she teaches math, and she said they read math books.
So I don't care where your
Okay.
class is. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it does not have to be in the English classroom. It can be a class of, sometimes they won't let you go into the classroom, depending. You have to actually, get permission. There is a permission slip letter online. If you'll look under the assignments tab for your web, you'll see.
Oh, I see it.
If you'll look at your assignments tab, let me share the screen if I can. Am I sharing the screen yet?
No.
Oh, Lord, where did it go? There it is. Let me find it and then I'll go do it, share the screen. Okay, under your assignments link, the Read Aloud project, you'll find all the guidelines for that. You'll find the permission slip. Some of you may need a permission slip to go along with that. That's there. If you do need a permission slip, just copy that off. It tells them what you need to have and what you need to do. That's under assignments. And you just print that permission slip off. And then there's also some model videos. There's a YouTube video right there that has an example of it. That's my student from last year. Have I shown y'all this? Oh yeah, okay, good, I'll show it.
Old black flies been buzzing away. And he's had a very busy, bad day. He ate on the crust of the apple pie. He bothered the babies and made her cry. Shoot, fly, shoot, fly, shoot. He coughed on the cookies with the chocolate chips. He told the dogs nearly out of his wits. Shoot, fly, shoot, fly, shoot. He poured on the eggs, gave the birthday cake. He whipped up the frosting. For goodness sake, shoot, fly, shoot, fly. When I get to this gotta help me.
Gotta help me, she said.
He danced on the edge of the garbage stack. He got sweet honey on his dirty pack. Shoot, fly, shoot, fly, shoot. He hid in the alley by the kitchen sink. He stole some jelly as quick as a whip. Shoot, fly, shoot, fly, shoot. Very good. He played on the keys by the kitchen door. On the desk. Grocery store. Shoot, fly, shoot, fly, shoot. He lapped up the milk in poor Kitty's bowl. He nibbled on the loop in the casket. Shoot, fly, shoot, fly, shoot.
Fast, isn't it?
Sure did.
He crawled in the field from the olive oil can. He pestered the parrot on her fan. Shoot, fly, shoot, fly, shoot. He dozed on the quilt on Grandma's bed. He rolled the red ribbon on her head. Shoot, fly, shoot, fly, shoot.
Sign up.
He sniffed the salami that Sister sliced. He ran around her teacup once or twice. Shoot, fly, shoot, fly, shoot. He slept on the stack of clean underwear. He played on the violin by the velvet chair. Shoot, fly, shoot, fly, shoot. He dozed on the window in the summer heat. He made a little X with his fur feet. Shoot, fly, shoot, fly, shoot. He buzzed about the yarn in Grandma's lap. He landed on her table. Flap, flip, flap. And squat. Old black flies been buzzing around, buzzing around, buzzing around. Old black flies been buzzing around, and he won't be bad no more. The end. So what have we learned today?
That's good. So that was just one of my students from a couple semesters ago. I don't know how I can't get this off now. Okay. Yeah, so that's just a model, and then there'll be others. So I have some others around. I haven't posted those yet. But that was just a cute one that I did last semester. But anyway, you should have your guidelines. You should have your permission slip letter, and you should have that model to go by. Questions about your read aloud project? You do have to have an art. I didn't show her art project that she used after that. I don't even remember what it was at this juncture, but when you come to give your presentation, be sure that you bring a sample of that art so we can see what they did. A lot of times they want it back, but my students will say, can I just borrow these to set my teacher so my teacher can see? And they say, yes, they want your teacher to see their work. But then they always say, can you get it back? Can you get it back? Can you get it back? So don't worry about that. If they want it back, just arrange to give it back. Or maybe just take up one or two people who want to give it to you so that you can give it to your teacher. They're really good about that. The only thing I would caution you, and there's a couple of videos related around, let me go into it. There's a couple of videos once you go inside of here that give you some ideas. It'll tell you how to read a book aloud, how to hold a book, how you should address and speak and read the story before. You're going to be nervous. You could see she was a little bit nervous at first, and it was just anxious. But remember, they're so excited to see a face that they're not familiar with. And particularly if you go into your child's classroom. I don't know how many of you all have children in schools now, but they love it. They get to, this is my mom's coming or my dad's coming, and my young fellas, all right, be ready, fellas. They're not used to seeing young fellas reading to them. And they're so good, and you'll be surprised how Dylan has a prime example of it when he went with a student. Weren't they so attentive to you? Yeah, share something about your experience that you were a little outdone about or surprised.
They were usually like rowdy. It's like, man, they just like sitting down and pay attention.
They did. They were the little girls too. He had a group of like little girls, and they were like looking at him. It was so funny in the video to see them just looking at him, just like. And they were, as a matter of fact, he didn't go to a school. Some of you said school, but he had a friend who had a dance troupe at her dance class, and she was a teacher in the dance class. So he went and read to the students at dance. It was 5 or 6 of them or so. There's a nice little group of them that he read to, but the same thing applies. You do the same techniques. Reading to one is not the same. You're not going to get that interaction, and you're not going to get that feeling. So you have to have a group, and a classroom setting is best. Be careful about that, because somebody went into a Sunday school class that had all these different age groups, and all I could hear the whole time were the babies crying in the background. I couldn't hear anything she said. And by the time that video was over, every last person in the class was like, oh my God, thank God. It's like a baby crying on an airplane or something. You cannot get away, and all you can hear is that baby crying. So don't get in mixed groups. Make sure that it's the same age group and it's age appropriate. I had a student pick a book that was too high. They went into a 2nd grade, and the reading level, the vocabulary, the whole plot of the story was way too advanced for them. And he was about a 4th or a 5th grade, and they couldn't understand, and they were just flipping through. They weren't paying attention, and you could tell. So all of that plays into your grade. She chose the perfect book, interacted with that grade. I think it was the 1st grade. It could have been in kindergarten. I can't remember now. I didn't have her PowerPoint in there. I just showed the video on there. But yeah, any other questions?
So our activity should be done with a PowerPoint?
No, I just have students who present their video in PowerPoint form.
Okay.
so that they have the first thing they have is the read along project. That's their cover slide. Then they have a picture of the teacher and their students. Then they'll have a picture of, and sometimes they just put all the pictures that they took onto the PowerPoint. Like they'll go around and take pictures of all the students taking coloring or whatever.
Right.
And they'll just post all those pictures on the PowerPoint so that we could see them all as we preview the PowerPoint, rather than showing us 15 pictures of things that they did. So, and I like that. It just has now become a thing in children's literature. You just do your video through a, you don't have to. I like it though. It really does give the whole experience. And then at the end, they have pictures of the project, particularly if the children don't want them to take the project home. They just take pictures of the projects and put that up on the PowerPoint video as well. So it's really not a lot of words on that PowerPoint video. It's just pictures and things that you want to share for your presentation.
What are some other things that you could do other than just drawing that's allowing the children?
Well, I had some, at Christmas one year, they made a little ornament. They had, well, what you have to do some things in advance depending on what age group you have, but they made a little Rudolph. So she took the supplies for that. And she had a popsicle stick, and then she had some little glued on things. She just took some things. The teachers will help you too, because they'll do have a lot, sometimes they'll have activities and things that you could do with them and kind of lead that activity. So when you go and talk to the teacher whose class you're going to go into, because they're going to be super helpful for you. They say, hey, well, they may even say, why don't you read this book? But try to choose something they have not listened to, or you're going to be in trouble. Because you know what they're going to do the whole time? They're going to tell the whole story before you get to the page. So as you read this page, they go, and the cat went over there and did that. And you're going to get all the photo because you hadn't gotten to that page. So try to choose something that they're not that familiar with. And that they can join in with. Don't ask them questions. Caution. Big caution, Mike. Do not ask children questions in the middle of while you're reading, because guess what? You're going to hear about their dog. How many of you have a dog? You will never get to your story if you say, how many of you have a dog? I have a dog. My dog is named Freedom, and my dog died. I had a student that told they were talking, and then she showed a picture, and right in the middle of the presentation, and I forget now what brought it, but she said, my mama died. And the little student was caught so off guard because I think it was a family in the picture, and they, and it was, how do you have this? And she said, my mama died, and she didn't know what to do. And the little child said, your mama died. Yeah, so she just went. She skipped that over like it was. And so she said it was the most awkward thing she ever had happen. So don't ask them questions. So they're gonna share their whole life. If you say, do you have a dog? They're gonna go from a dog all the way to whatever they. Buried their cricket out in the backyard. Go.
You ask questions afterwards?
Yes. Yeah, don't ask comprehension questions, because they got that. But questions such as analytical questions, like why did the fly keep buzzing around those people? And then when I went smack, boom, what does that mean? Or make them think about things. Not like how many of you have. Like flies. That wasn't such a good question. I mean, like flies. Nobody, wants to be bothered by flies. Well, but ask entertaining questions, things that they're going to interact with the book. What would have happened if that little girl found the frog before the little boy found the frog? Ask them things like that, and then they'll involve themselves. But again, you got to watch out, because that question's going to go to a whole long conversation, so you won't be able to film all of that. But they do. But they want to come up and they want to hug you, and they fall in love. Particularly for my fellas, they love to come up. I had an older gentleman go into the classroom last semester, and they just asked him a million questions about his personal. You have children, and like he was like a daddy figure. He's an older gentleman, like a great, to them maybe a grandfather figure or an older figure for them, and they just loved it. So give them the opportunities, but you can't film all of that. But just know. YMCA is really good. Greensville is really good. I've had students, and as a matter of fact, I had a student from Keysville not long ago who went, I can't remember the school that she went into, but that teacher and those of you being education, she worked for Longwood and she participated in the gifted program through the summer. And she asked that my student who had come in and read the book if she would help her in the gifted and talented and do a little internship that summer. So she was so excited, and she got that from going into the classroom and reading to the students. And they're going to ask you back. They will ask the men they want to come back. The teachers will say, can you come back? And the children, when are you coming back? When are you coming back? So try to arrange some time to go back if you do, because they love it. But any kind of literacy program, the library, the YMCA, a church group, just arrange it ahead of time. Don't pop in on them. They need to know that you're going to come and read to them so they'll know to behave. But that's what I say, classroom situations are better. But if it comes down to worst, and I had one little student last time that something failed and she couldn't get in at the last minute and whatever. So she gathered about 5 or 6 children in her neighborhood about the same age, and she did it in her house. And I'm okay with that as long as you have. That makes it hard on her because she knew the children in the neighborhood and they weren't really in a classroom setting, so they didn't have to sit down, and they were up and down. Do not yell at them and say, sit down, because she did. Sit down. Because she knew it was her little nephew or whatever. But practice in case it doesn't turn out. You'll have to go back. Be sure to look at your video. I only can judge you and grade you on your video. For the most part, people rarely ever get anything less than an A. Even if you're super, super nervous, you know, you've done that and taken that initiative and you've done everything that you need to do. You've got your grade level out. So just being able to do that and experience that makes what you've learned about literature, children's literature, genres, teaching of children's literature, analyzing literature, appropriate literature for readability and all that worthwhile.
How do you think she videoed that?
Phone. Her phone.
Her phone.
Oh, be careful and that you look it over. And if you upload it as a YouTube video, you'll be fine. If you don't know how to do a YouTube video, just Google it. How do you upload a video onto YouTube? You do not have to have a link for that. You do your own link. That's how I figured out how to upload these videos on there. I just Googled it. So you young people are much more tech savvy. Probably have done it a million times already. But if you are an older student, you need a little bit of a guidance. I'm sure someone in that class will help you to do it. It only takes a minute to just go to YouTube, get an account. You have to have an account first. Put it on private. You don't have to put it on public. Just remember, if you put it on public, then anybody can see it. You just make it private. That's the only difference. Just change the public thing over to private, and that way you're good to go. Okay? And then I'll just have the link, and I will be able to, all you'll have to do is just put the link in your PowerPoint or show the link through this or through whatever your email. Questions? Good questions. It'll be fun. But don't wait till the last minute to do it. Anytime early that you get it done, go ahead and you can shoot it to me. I will put it up before you ever show it. It won't make a difference. So if you don't mind it being seen by other people, I'll certainly put it up. My online classes are sending them. They have all the month of that. They don't have to do it until April either, but they've already arranged it and getting it in, sitting around their schedules that they have. Thank you guys. Great job today. Bye.
When we did it, just so it was, I knew.
That's the graduation.
Why don't you slip it under my door? I'm not doing now because I won't get in there. I need at least to be in my office.
Look up and you're like, and they're looking at Michaela. I can see Michaela from between the guess what? So I'm gonna